Brian Raisindoll here. I'm the host of the Fit Growth Machine podcast, where we talk with top leaders in the fitness industry. Before introducing today's guest, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. At BSR Digital, we help fitness brands that want to scale their business to the next level through Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. BSR Digital knows that most e-commerce brands want to grow their sales, but they lack a solid plan and professional team to help them succeed. That's why BSR Digital offers strategic plans, implementation, organization, and account audits to help more than 1,000 e-commerce brands like yours grow their businesses and surpass their competitors. To learn more, visit them at bsrdigital.com, or you can email them at hello@bsrdigital.com. So today we have a great guest. His name is Garret Akerson. He's an adventure seeker, brand builder, and the CEO of Kindred Bravely. Hey, Garret, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Brian. Thanks. Looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah, great. So as always, the first question I have for you is, how did you get started? In this case, you and your wife with Kindred Bravely.
We got started in 2015, and it was very much a need-based idea and startup. So my wife was breastfeeding our youngest at the time and could not find anything comfortable to wear. And I was looking to start an e-commerce startup, a D2C startup, and yeah, my wife was in this office actually one evening and said, "Hey, what about designing our own breastfeeding and maternity apparel? I know exactly what I want, and I can't find it." And so that was the spark that started it all.
Oh, so it was something she needed for herself, and she couldn't find the solution in the market.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and how did you go from the idea to actually uh, finding? Because I guess did you have any experience in manufacturing or anything like that?
No, neither of us did. So at the time, I was running a digital advertising agency, and I had no apparel background. My wife, Deeanne, had no apparel background. In fact, she was on leave from being a math teacher. And I think it's like one of the greatest things about, this time that we live in. You can figure out anything so quickly. And so we just dove right in, hopped onto Alibaba actually, and just started chatting with manufacturers in China. So we like literally would have, a window open chatting with China factories, and then another Google window open Googling like, okay, what's that they're asking, or what does this mean? So it's very much just like learn as you go.
Wow. So
And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
we're also fortunate to live pretty close to LA. So we made a lot of trips up to the LA garment district to work with pattern makers and sewers and that was it. So that was the beginning idea and how we kind of kicked it off. We sent samples to 3 factories, and 2 of those came back and they were just junk, and 1 factory nailed it. It was a great sample, and we placed our first order for 500 units. So we started in February, well, really January, but incorporated in February 2015. And then we had our first product out in the market by May. So it took us about 4 months,
Wow.
May, June. Yeah.
Wow. And what's the biggest differentiator between your product and the existing products in the market back then?
It was very much a fit and a feel difference. So Deanne really knew what she wanted from like a function and a fit and a feel. And I think that makes it so much easier when you're launching, a new product or a company, is if you are the customer, you really know like this is what I really want. And instead of having to do, market surveys, and I think you kind of get some noise often when you do market surveys, or some mixed signals on what customers say they want versus what they actually want. Yeah, I kind of go back to the Steve Jobs example of like, if I asked the customer what they wanted, they would have said they wanted another, flip phone. with buttons and a pop-out keyboard versus the iPhone.
Yeah.
Our example is not that extreme, but it was very much driven by a personal need, and still to this day, we survey the customer more now, certainly quite a bit more, but it's still very much like, hey, here's a piece that is something I would want or I would want to wear. Not me personally, but my co-founder Deeanne.
Yeah, and I can imagine because it's already hard enough to start a new business, but it's even harder to introduce a new product to the market. And even more in this case, at least that's what I see from my point of view, because it's not that there's a clear, visible differentiator, but it's based on how it feels. And so did you have any challenges or to get validation or proof of concept, or actually to tell the audience that your product is actually different from the bras or any other products that they can find in the market?
Yeah, we still face that challenge today. I think with any physical product, but certainly with clothing or one that's like you need to touch it to feel a quality difference. And yeah, still a challenge today. How can you, through images or video, like show the customer and get them to like take that step to, okay, I'm gonna order, I'm gonna try it. Because I think once they get it in their hand, they're like, oh wow, this is significantly higher quality than other products, other options that I had. I think in the beginning, the key was we gave away a lot of units. I think so. Our first order was only 500 units. It's really fun looking back. And now we place orders for hundreds of thousands of units. But out of that first 500, I think we gave away 250, Brian. Like it was just give it to anyone and everyone, friends, family, just to get the word out and get it in their hands. And then mom started saying, wow, I like writing rave reviews. So I think, UGC helps as well, but certainly reviews, any user generated reviews, then taking those and putting them in, in social or in ads or paired with images.
Yeah, the social proof.
Social proof is big.
Yeah, and how did you get started with that? I mean, did you got the supply from China? You got the samples, the first 500 units. You started on e-commerce, or you started on Amazon? How do you get started with this to get traction, which is
Yeah,
like a thing that most entrepreneurs struggle with in the beginning?
we launched on both Amazon and Shopify at the same time. So built our Shopify store. We kept it really basic. So we did not spend a lot of development money on the Shopify store. And we really focused on Amazon to start with, just because search demand is there. And I think it's for any product where it's search driven and there's a marketplace for it. Amazon being the largest marketplace, it just made it so much easier for us to launch on Amazon and get traction quickly because there's just search demand there. So as soon as you just show up, you're going to start getting sales
Do you
versus
advise?
having to
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
spend a lot on Facebook advertising or Google search or anything else.
Yeah,
Now that was in 2015, so the market's changed a lot.
and what could you say to entrepreneurs now, starting the brands like you did back then? Would you recommend them to start on Amazon or Shopify, both?
That's a great question. That's one I struggle with. I think it depends is the short answer. Depends on your product and the market you're going after. I would say if it has search demand and there are similar products on Amazon, yes, uh, I would definitely list on Amazon's marketplace and push sales in that marketplace. The A9 algorithm was much easier to rank for keywords on in 2015, but it's still not overly complex, right? If you can just push sales and get to that first 25 reviews, it's not overly complex. It's not easy, but it still is fairly simple. Like generate sales and reviews on Amazon, and then you'll get organic ranking. Now the tactics have changed on how to do that, but
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
but I say it depends, because if there's not much search demand there, or you don't want to give up margin, and you have expertise on, social or TikTok or influencers or affiliates, then I mean, if that's a, a muscle that you already have, then I would go that route and ignore Amazon.
Yeah, totally. So if we fast forward to today, I know you have built a big team now, but the particular thing about it, which is I think really common since the pandemic route, right, is that it's remote. So why did you make that choice back then, and what are the biggest challenges of it, right?
Yeah. So the decision at the time to be remote was just as simple as I did not want to go into the office. I was used to commuting into the office, kind of just burnt out on it. And then we had two boys at the time. Deanne and I, our boys were 2 and 4. I wanted to spend more time with them. Like if it's lunch, I wanted, go have lunch with the family. And so that was the original reason. We've been remote from day one, never switched. We do have a warehouse, so obviously fulfillment team is in-house and on site, but most of the team, and by most I mean, like 98% is all remote, all across the US, Canada, Philippines, Ukraine. And so we were really deliberate on like building that out, the structure of it, accountability, and our whole like core values and culture. And it really was centered around shared values, hiring for those. Like we had really clear values. We are brave, grateful, generous, and encouraging. And so that was something that both resonated with customers and then employees, team members. And then we always have worked by 90-day sprints, a little different than agile sprints. If you're familiar with agile, like, you have the stand up, daily huddle, and the weekly meetings. So we did 90 days where every team member is working on kind of one big thing. And then that's broken down into 2-week segments that are all pretty measurable. And so I think that helped, certainly on the accountability side. And then we're all just really driven people, really accountable, and really just put in that framework of, we use Asana for project management. So it's like in there, you can, everybody can see what everybody's working on, that we're shared collaborating on projects. And then we use Slack as our backbone for communication. So everybody's, jumping in on Slack for quick conversations, or, Zoom or Google Hangouts. And it's just worked. It was really nice coming into COVID, because COVID wasn't any adjustment for the team. It was just like we'd always done business, other than kids at home. So all of you parents out there, all of a sudden kids are at home and you're trying to work. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, well, I have 2-year-old twins, so I have always had them at home. The one that who wasn't at home back then was me. And when I started working at home with them without an office, then I moved into a bigger house, but it was like, no way. So a huge challenge. Yeah, in places that sometimes you cannot imagine, right? So speaking about challenges, I mean, you probably addressed it a little bit, but I'd like to go deeper there if you want about having a remote team, because it's a thing right now for many or most companies, no matter their size, right? So, what's the biggest advice you could give um, entrepreneurs that are starting their business and probably remote right now in 2021, right?
Remote in 2021, my advice.
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
I think,
versus being in an office, the perks. I mean, being in an office, you have like you have fun, you have like off work moments or chats with coworkers while I don't know, making a coffee or having lunch, or you laugh, you tell jokes or whatever, right? And through Slack is great, Asana is great, but it's probably how do you keep the fun? How do you keep a culture? What are some other things you can tell the
yeah.
audience? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting you ask because I think, if you're not fully remote and you're hybrid, I mean, a lot of teams obviously now are able to go hybrid if they're not fully remote. I was talking to another entrepreneur this weekend, and his new like philosophy for the team was work at home, play at work, which I thought was kind of stuck with me. That's interesting because I think being in person still really lends itself to that collaboration and that a creative like aspect where it feels a little bit more like play. Whereas I think all of us, certainly as entrepreneurs, can really relate to being super productive at home. At least for me, like I can crank through a ton of work at home, no distractions.
Yeah.
So I think, we're in the new phase of, remote work as a reality, even if it's only, 3 or 4 days a week. Um, how we've been able to bring in the fun part and still and have 5 days a week remote is we've just one been really conscious about developing it and what that looks like. So we have an all team meeting every Friday, and our team's fairly large now. We're like 82 team members, 82 employees, and so it like keeps getting bigger and bigger. And in that, the team gets updates on like, okay, here's the new products that are rolling out, and here's what marketing's doing, and here's what customers are saying. So there is that update status, but there's also fun, like there's music when everybody logs in and people are kind of chatting. There'll be team Jeopardy sometimes. We'll celebrate birthdays, things like that. And then we will do small breakouts. So Zoom makes it really easy to break out into rooms of like 2, 3, 4, and just to have that personal connection. And in that, at that point, we're sharing things like how was your week? What was your weekly win? We have these fun things called Brave cards that we developed as a company. That's like ways we support each other. And so it's, we'll talk about how we did on our Brave card that week. And usually there's a prompt for the week, typically around values, like what's one way you were brave this week. And then we've incorporated a program called Random Acts of Generosity, where every team member gets to give away $50 every month. So that embraces our like core value of being generous. And so we'll talk about, if it's the end of the month meeting, like what was your random act of generosity this month? Like who did you help? And that could be in like kind goods, Kindred Bravely, swag. It could be in a Grubhub card, anything. Just how are you being generous?
Like
And
that.
then we have plenty of other celebrations, occasions throughout the season, ways to celebrate each other, and then smaller breakouts as well. And I cannot claim responsibility for all that. We have an amazing team, and there's team members that have just come up with really fun ways to still connect remotely.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that as you grow, besides anyone in the team can bring their own fun, happiness, and all those stuff. I figured that as you grow, you need to hire some executive level positions to help you with that and many other things. So, how do you know when it's the right time to hire those people?
So I think the basic answer is when revenue allows. Uh, I think you could hire, depending. I had a really strong co-founder and my spouse. So on the executive team, for the first 4 or 5 years, it was just the two of us on the executive team. But really, once we hit 5, 6 million in revenue, we started building out more middle management. So just some good managers. And then once we got past that kind of 12 to 15 million range, then we started building out the C-suite more, and or promoting great managers into VP or executive roles. And so I think the straightforward answer is just revenue. Like you get big enough that you can hire more managers and or executives. That being said, if you're smaller, and you don't have a co-founder, or you feel like you need to shore that up, certainly you could give away some equity to get that position if it's C-level. I think probably too many founders make the mistake of doing that too early, in my opinion. I don't know. Um, I I kind of felt like you probably don't need that many C-level seats as long as you have really a really good solid team that has some really good managers, people managers, just to make sure things get done right and the ball is moving.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you're right, and I think there's no single valid answer, and it depends also on your capabilities, your skills. If you feel comfortable doing the CEO or the COO job or whatever, or if you feel that you need someone to help level up the company and to get more revenue, all this stuff. So I think it depends on a lot of factors. But as you said, revenue, of course, will dictate whether you can afford those people or not. But then I think there are some other factors at play as
yeah,
well. But yeah, as you say, in order
I
to have
think,
like a yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I would say we certainly did hire ahead a little bit, like we could see it coming in the need. So we were always trying to plan, okay, what's our org chart for the next 6 to 12 months? And then continually updating that. Okay, what's our org chart look? And just filling in those blanks and really putting a lot of thought into that, I think helps. And then fractional, like we had a fractional CFO all the way until January of this year. And so if you can find a good fractional resource, you can get really solid C-level for a fraction of the cost, at
Yeah.
least in the CFO role. I feel like, in the COO role or, director of operations, that you're probably going to want to bring in-house sooner. HR, we delayed on for a while and also used, some outsourced HR services. But I even think on the, director of operations level, you can find a good ops manager that's going to cost you less and maybe groom them to grow or eventually hire above them without even having to go right to COO.
Yeah, and so I guess that, or probably I know that in order to grow a great company and have a great team, you need to choose wisely when you hire and have a great interviewing process, right? So, could you like to briefly talk about that? How do you interview? How do you make sure they're the right fit? Group calls or single people call, or how do you do it?
Yes, we have a very unique interview and hiring process. I think it's one of the things that's led to our success. And again, I can't take any credit from this. It's from Cameron Harold. He runs the COO Alliance and ran a company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK as a COO. And so he turned us on early on to the group interview concept. So we have we write a job description that like attracts people we want as far as a values and kind of work ethic standpoint, and repels people that we don't want. Um, yeah, I wish I could share an example. It's really specific. Like, here's who we're looking for. If you're this, come join us. If you don't like any of this, basically don't apply. And then that leads right to a fairly long form. We do not look at resumes. So it's not like, hey, send me your resume. And then I'm going to go through, 50 to 100 resumes. To be honest, it's rare to never that I look at that I'll look at a resume. I just don't. And that form basically kind of is a resume though. It's got top grading elements. So if you're familiar with top grading, it's got some of those elements in it. It's got some other like cultural fit questions. And then that leads to a group interview. But we're fortunate in that we have quite a few applicants that want to come join the team. So on average, we'll get like 100, 150, maybe 200 applicants for a position. So I think it starts there because hiring is partially a number game. You have to get enough people in the top of the funnel. I think marketers can understand this. I think we often forget this when hiring. If you're going to get, 3 quality candidates at the end, you have to start with 100 at the top. That's your 3% conversion rate. Like you're running an e-commerce site, right? 100 down to 3. And so we'll screen that 100 applicants down to like 30, and then we'll run 3 group interviews. And our group interviews aren't group interviews as in a group of us interviewing one candidate. They're flipped. So it's 10 candidates in a Zoom call to 2 team members interviewing. So it's very different, so unusual. And again, that this is something from Cameron Harold. And what it allows you to do, one, is get through a large volume of candidates, 30 candidates. It would take, 30 times 30 minutes. It's going to just take way too long. And two, I think it makes it so much easier when you're visiting and meeting candidates together, because you can see how they interact with each other, how they interact with you. And really that interview, you're just looking for cultural fit. And if you're doing sequential interviews, it's really hard to remember, oh, well, what did I like about this candidate, or what did I like about that one? But when you see everyone side by side on a Zoom, they're really simple questions, like tell us about a time you failed, or, someone that you view as a role model. It's nothing hard in the group interview, but they're a great way to get to know candidates. And so that then gets graded on a matrix and then narrowed down to 3 to 5 finalists. And that's the candidates that get one-on-one interviews. And then we use a couple different tools. We use a Colby index, we'll use a DISC, and a couple other tools, as well as one-on-one interviews with finalists. So you get, from 100 candidates down to that 3, and then you just get amazing candidates
Yeah, I
because you
mean,
have such a large pool that you start with.
I'm fascinated by this because there's nothing random here in your success. I mean, from the hiring process to the communication uh to everything, right? To the product selection, to growing a team of 80 plus and doing millions in revenue. There's no luck behind, right? The small portions maybe, but most is credit for hard work and smart decisions. And I think that entrepreneurs can learn a lot about what you just said, because sometimes, as you said, including me back in the day, sometimes you need an extra hand. And it's like, hey, probably most new brands get 10 applicants at most, 20 applicants, not 100 plus or 200. So it's like, okay, if they look at me the right way, I'll hire them. Like, you're hired, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, make that mistake, and then you regret that because it affects the quality of your service. It results in bad reviews, in bad reputation, and in a lot of, I mean, headaches. And yeah, and sometimes you don't know where the issue is, and you should start in the hiring area, right? So I think that's a smart advice that I haven't heard in the podcast before, that entrepreneurs should pay attention to.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think we often, or I've seen often as entrepreneurs, just kind of being like, okay, I need to hire somebody. I'm going to put up a job, listing, and like you said, get 10 applicants, and which one do I like, for lack of a better word. And I think it's just like that. It just doesn't work. You might get lucky, but there's so many times when you just do not get lucky. And in the end, business is a team sport, right? It comes down to, it's like any team sport. Is your team better than the other team? And then the quality of your decisions. But the quality of your decisions is dictated by your team. And you as an executive.
Yeah,
So if you get an A team in there, you are just going to outperform other teams.
yeah. So to wrap up, do you think there's anything I didn't ask you that you think will benefit the audience?
We could go on for probably another hour, but no.
I
We
know. No,
do
I mean,
we
it's super interesting to hear a story because, as you said, there's nothing random. There's a lot of value here for entrepreneurs to learn, and yeah, it's been an honor to have you here. So, where can people go to learn more about you, about the company? Yes, of course, the URL will be in the show notes. But is there anywhere that you want people to go to find more about you?
Yeah, sure. Happy to reach out to me, happy to help out, or provide some resources if I can to other entrepreneurs. Easiest way to find me is probably LinkedIn /GE Akerson. Or you can probably look me up on LinkedIn, Garret Akerson, not that common of a name. So probably will pop up that way. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or shoot me a note at Kindred Bravely. and the team can always pass your note along to me.
That's great. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Brian.